This begins chapter 23, which is iteration, which is just another word for looping. And in this case, there will be three different types of loops introduced in this chapter. The first is the while loop, the second is the for loop, and the third is the repeat loop. We are only going to look at the while loop and the for loop here because the repeat loop is not used as often as the first two. So let's begin with the while loop. Here is the syntax. If there is only one statement to do when the condition is met, then it can all be done on one line. You can type in while, and then you put your condition in parentheses, and then the statement that will be executed. That statement will be executed over and over and over as long as the condition is true. Once that condition becomes false, then it will drop through and do the statement that follows that particular statement. The more common version here is when you have several statements that need to be done. You have while condition in parenthesis, then an opening curly brace, and then indented two spaces for readability, all of the statements that you have to execute while that condition is true, and then end with a curly brace. As with the if statement, it is common practice to indent by a consistent number of spaces. I'll be using 2 spaces for readability. The specific question that is going to be answered in this first video is the Fibonacci series. We want to generate the first few elements of the Fibonacci series, and you've seen these in the conceptual and specification portion of the setup here for this problem. The first two numbers are 1 in the Fibonacci series, and then you simply add the 2 previous numbers, so 1 plus 1 gives you 2, and then you add the 2 previous here, 1 plus 2 gives you 3, and then 2 plus 3 gives you 5, 3 plus 5 gives you 8, 5 plus 8 gives you 13, 8 plus 13 gives you 21, 13 plus 21 is 34, etc. And what we would like to do here is we would like to generate the first 10 Fibonacci numbers, and we're going to do that using a while loop. I'm going to flip to the upper left-hand window because that's a better place to develop code. That way, if I make a mistake, I can simply go up there and re-execute. I'm going to begin by setting the vector name fib to a numeric vector of 10 values. If you wanted the first 100 Fibonacci numbers, you would set this to 100. When it executes that statement, it will set a vector named fib to 10 elements, which are all zeros. So the next thing I'd like to do is take the kind of prime the pump, the first 2 elements of that fib vector, namely fib1 and fib2, set both of those to 1. And where that's coming from is down below here, you can see the first 2 elements, elements 1 and 2, are both 1 in the Fibonacci series. Next thing up top here, going to set I equal to 3. And this is known as a loop index. And this is basically saying we want to start with the 3rd element in the Fibonacci sequence and fill it in by adding the previous 2 values. And then we can go into a loop, which says while the loop index I is less than or equal to 10, do the following statements. And there's going to be a couple statements in here. So here they are. The first statement is we want the ith value of fib sub I, to be set equal to fib sub I minus 1 plus fib sub I minus 2. Now what's happening there is I is set equal to 3, and when you look down here, we're trying to fill in the 3rd Fibonacci number, And what is that third Fibonacci number, which is fib sub 3? It is the sum of the two previous ones, namely fib sub 2 plus fib sub 1. So in this case, 1 plus 1 will give you 2, and that's what will give you this third Fibonacci number. And it continues that pattern as long as I is less than or equal to 10. One last important thing that's easy to forget in this loop is we have to take I and we have to increment it. I equals I plus 1. That is, whatever the value of I is, and at least at this point it's 3, we add 1 to that to give us 4 and replace I with 4. And then the next time the loop goes through, we'll be filling in fib sub 4. Finally, I am going to end this loop with another curly brace. And maybe at the end of this, I'll go ahead and print out all of the Fibonacci numbers just like this. Now, when this is highlighted, it will execute everything that is there down in the console. So let's go down to the console here and clear it out and get it ready to be executed. And then when we push run, there is the code getting executed. Silently, it will fill up the Fibonacci array. And finally, when you type fib at the end, you will get the first 10 elements of the Fibonacci numbers. That's kind of a simple example of a while loop. On the next video, we're going to look at a for loop.